Cooperative efforts between all the nations in weather prediction and eventually in weather control.
That will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
There are reasons it's scarcely mentioned in the media. In case you missed it, here are some recent reports about it that came from China. The lack of discussion about weather modification in the West may lead you to think it's all very new technology. Actually, the first rain-making patent was filed over 100 years ago, in 1891. And artificial cloud cover patents were filed almost 100 years ago in 1927, along with cloud seeding in 1947, which is the process that climatologists use to create rain. By 1952, headlines like this exonerated our technological success with weather manipulation. Then, in 1962, after President Lyndon Johnson asserted, "He who controls the weather controls the world," the subject seemed to disappear. Naturally, many people were not aware of the use of weather as a weapon of war. So programs like Project Popeye in the 60s went unnoticed. Popeye viciously cloud-seeded Vietnam to worsen their monsoon storms. One atmospheric scientist, Ken Caldera, shared that in a meeting discussing weather warfare, some of the ideas that were considered included creating tidal waves that would destroy a shoreline, or putting pathogens in a cloud. Though it's a little-known topic, the relevance of weather warfare is so important, it's been compared to the power achieved when scientists split the atom. Dane Wigington is a fierce fighter for weather modification transparency, and he says that weather modification is the crown jewel by which countries are destabilized or forced to allow occupation. He adds that a nation can be brought to its knees without even knowing they were at war. Unlike the atomic bomb, however, weather warfare can be deployed in secret, and it will always appear to be caused by Mother Nature. Weather warfare is deceptive and insidious. So it's no wonder the United Nations sought to ban weather warfare beginning in 1977. Consider, however, if you're a military leader, are you willingly going to lay down such a powerful weapon? In fact, it makes you wonder how many times someone was humiliated for saying something that sounded crazy, when it's clear that we just don't have all the facts. Weather modification includes geoengineering, which is, by definition, the deliberate large-scale manipulation of environmental processes that affect the Earth's climate in an attempt to counteract the effects of global warming. It was decided by a few that the best way to prevent warming was not to change power sources, but to prevent solar radiation from hitting the Earth, a technique called solar radiation management, and a process which mimics the effect of a volcanic eruption. There are a variety of methods that can be used to prevent sun from reaching and heating the Earth, but we just want to focus on one, something called stratospheric aerosol injection by jets. SAI is the supposed potential solution to climate warming, according to its proponents. Renowned geoengineering scientist in the United States, David Keith, appeared on the Stephen Colbert Show to promote his book, A Case for Climate Engineering. What was revealed may be the most critical information about covert geoengineering practices than ever admitted to the public.
You could actually spray sulfuric acid in the stratosphere 20 kilometers over our head and use that to stop the planet warming up. And it had ugly tech fix.
You can spray something into the atmosphere to change.
Spray pollution into the atmosphere to stop it warming.
How do you do this?
You start with a fleet of modified business jets and say 20,000 tons of sulfuric acid into the stratosphere every year. And each year you have to put a little more. And this doesn't, in the long run, mean that you can forget about cutting emissions. We will need to rein in.
No, we'll get to it eventually. In the meantime, we're shrouding the Earth in sulfuric acid.
So people are terrified about talking about this because they're scared that it will prevent us cutting emissions.
Right, and also that it's sulfuric acid.
We put 50 million tons of sulfuric acid in the air now as pollution, and it kills 1 million people a year worldwide.
Okay, but it'll be better if we put more in.
We're talking about 1% of that.
1% more, we're just killing 10,000 more people.
You can do math.
What happens to the sulfuric acid after it's sprayed? Does it just stay up there?
No, it rains down, but it's a tiny addition to what we're already doing.
Is there any possible way this could come back to bite us in the end?
It actually turns out to be an old idea. This was known since President Johnson.
You ever look at those planes up there? They have contrails behind them? Maybe all those planes with the contrails, maybe they're actually spraying chemicals into the atmosphere right now and Uncle Sam isn't telling us.
It seems extremely unlikely.
That the United States is not telling something to its citizens? That seems extremely likely to me. Read the newspaper. I think they might have your idea.
So, this world-renowned climatologist says, if we can just inject a little more sulfuric acid and metal nanoparticulates into the stratosphere, we can effectively reflect the sun's heat. Research on weather modification goes back well before its public mention in 1980. This document, presented to the U.S. Senate in 1978, reveals that cloud seeding research began in 1947, and with devastating consequences to the environment. But would you believe that the research goes back even further? Medal of Honor recipient Admiral Richard E. Byrd wrote a book called Alone about his experience in the Arctic. No one at the time would have noticed that the book cover shows sky aerosol patterns. This book was published back in 1938, after the First World War, when these technologies were being studied at the poles. Kevin Shipp was formerly a decorated CIA officer. In his book, From the Company of Shadows, he reveals the shocking facts about covert climate engineering, including massive aerosol dumps over populations, and the electromagnetic energy networks that are designed to manipulate air masses. These weather technologies have been researched and implemented for decades. Seeing how incredibly effective, how complicated, and how harmful these technologies are to life, it's no wonder so little is shared with the public. Edward Griffin explains the difference between contrails and SAI, what some people call chemtrails. A jet contrail that was pure condensation would not start and stop like this. Also, because they have metal nanoparticulates in them, as Keith and Shipp revealed, jet trails are electromagnetically conductive. On the ground, networks of powerful microwave radio frequency from NEXRAD, which is Next Generation Radar networks, can be transmitted to manipulate air mass. When this happens, it will make unnaturally precise geometric patterns of the clouds, directing the metallic nanoparticles sprayed from SAI, the way a magnet directs iron shavings. Up until the 1940s, airplanes didn't leave lingering jet contrails behind them. But today, military jets used for SAI appear nearly invisible from below, though their jet trails are very visible. SAI technology was added, however, to commercial aircraft in recent years, and is now more prevalent than ever in the sky. WikiLeaks made it known, however, that airlines receive billions of dollars from the government. To the many sources shared above, there's a network of radio frequency transmitters that are spread across many countries and are used to manipulate precipitation and dry air mass. The common narrative says that these NEXRAD transmitters merely read the weather, but radar sourced from weather modification facilities shows different, revealing how they actually transmit microwave energy. When these methods are employed, you can see proof of the technology in the perfect circular radius on these unmodified radar screens. So, these facilities direct high-powered microwave radiation frequencies, which blast the metal nanoparticulates, aluminum, and barium and others, as Keith discussed. This makes air mass become electromagnetically charged. But one of the most shocking aspects of SAI geoengineering is its disregard for the effects metals have on life. Aluminum does not occur by itself in nature, only combined with other elements or compounds. Now, however, it's being detected everywhere, in our fresh water, our oceans, even on the highest mountain peaks. With the admission of its use in SAI, it's shocking to read the dangers of aluminum. Dr. Russell Blaylock is a brain neurosurgeon who has tried to make public the effects that metal toxicity is having on humans. He points out that human brains show more and more aluminum, particularly in neurological disorders like Alzheimer's, ALS, Parkinson's, and multiple sclerosis. Dr. Blaylock says these conditions are not due to the aging of the population, but that they are due to toxins like aluminum, including that in vaccines, adding, no one's telling the truth. He also says that when these metals, aluminum, barium, and stadium, are combined, they're especially toxic. The most damaging result is cognitive dysfunction, including memory loss. The smaller the nanoparticle, the more likely it is to cross the blood barrier to enter the brain, where it stays. Blaylock is not alone. Long ago, neurobiologists determined the connection between aluminum and Alzheimer's. Metal toxicity is even showing up in soil, which means it becomes part of the nutrient uptake of crops and trees, making all life vulnerable to its effects. While there are many factors contributing to the loss of our natural environment, this insidious, invisible villain accumulates over time, making environments lethal and sick. Not unlike radiation poisoning, there are unsavory reasons why all the weather modification that's being done is not being shared with you. Like much information today, the topic of weather modification is carefully censored. We use powerful technologies to reduce the heating of our planet and assert power over other nations. But attacking and labeling something as a conspiracy can be a powerful form of propaganda that creates confusion and distrust of the truth. It's an abuse of power and an assault on human dignity. SAI happening above us is being labeled a conspiracy to cast doubt over what your senses are showing you. All the while, world powers dominate other countries, made vulnerable by extreme weather, and the polluting energy and military industries remain in solid control. Somehow, the most rational, intelligent, life-giving solution, renewable energy, got trumped by other strategies. And weather modification allows powerful companies and the military to preserve their financial and physical power and to work covertly.